They saw a friendly taco vendor who spoke broken English and smiled at every customer, someone who worked 16-hour days to support his family and lived in a small apartment above his cousin's garage. What they didn't see was that Miguel Ramirez was actually Agent Michael Rodriguez, former DEA undercover operative who had infiltrated the Sinaloa Cartel, taken down their Phoenix operation, and disappeared into witness protection with a price on his head that would never expire. Welcome to The Human Stories. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden identity and deadly secrets, tell me in the comments from which city are you watching this video today. And if you believe these stories of quiet survivors deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button, because sometimes your favorite food vendor is protecting more than just family recipes. Miguel's Tacos sat on the corner of Roosevelt and Central in downtown Phoenix, a bright yellow food truck that had become part of the neighborhood. The owner, Miguel Ramirez, was exactly what you would expect. Friendly smile, worn hands, and determination that showed in every 16-hour workday. He spoke English with a heavy accent that made customers smile when he called them amigo and micha. His recipes were authentic, passed down from his grandmother in Guadalajara. According to the story he told everyone, the truck was immaculate, the food was incredible, and the prices were fair enough that construction workers ate there as often as business executives. Miguel had been serving lunch to downtown Phoenix for 5 years, building a loyal customer base that included courthouse employees who trusted him with their lunch breaks, hospital workers who appreciated his authentic flavors, and kids from the nearby school who saved their allowance for his famous street tacos made with handmade tortillas. He knew every regular customer by name, remembered their usual orders, and always asked about their families with genuine interest that made people feel like more than just customers. But Miguel Ramirez was a carefully constructed identity that had taken federal marshals 6 months to create, and Michael Rodriguez 8 years to perfect every detail, from the accent that he practiced daily to the recipes that he had actually learned from a real abuela during an undercover assignment in Culiacan, Mexico, where he had risked his life daily for 3 years. The real Michael Rodriguez had been one of the most successful undercover DEA agents in the Southwest, spending 3 years embedded with the Sinaloa Cartel, rising through their ranks from street dealer to trusted lieutenant, learning their operations, gathering evidence, and building cases that would eventually destroy their entire Phoenix network. He had lived as Miguel Sanchez, a mid-level trafficker trusted with moving millions of dollars worth of drugs across the border. When the operation concluded, it resulted in 47 arrests, seizure of over $200 million, and complete dismantling of the cartel's Arizona infrastructure. It was the largest drug bust in Phoenix history, and Michael Rodriguez was the star witness. But success in the drug war came with a deadly price. Every cartel member who escaped the mass arrests knew that Miguel Sanchez was actually a federal agent. Every sicario still on the street had standing orders to kill him on sight, and every dollar the organization could scrape together was being used to fund the manhunt that would never end until they found him. The bounty on his head was $10 million, dead or alive. The Witness Protection Program had given Michael Rodriguez a new name, a new carefully documented background, and a completely new life history. But they couldn't give him peace of mind or erase the nightmares, because he knew that someday, somewhere, the cartel would find him. And when that day came, his survival would depend entirely on skills that had nothing to do with making authentic Mexican tacos, and everything to do with staying alive in a world where mercy didn't exist. Michael had chosen the food truck business for tactical reasons. It allowed him to stay mobile, change locations, and maintain visibility while appearing to be a hardworking businessman. The truck was modified with reinforced walls, bulletproof glass, and hidden compartments. His daily routine was carefully planned to maximize security while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. He arrived at his corner every morning at exactly 11 a.m. after conducting a surveillance route that checked for suspicious vehicles or unfamiliar faces. He positioned the truck to provide clear sightlines in all directions, and maintained radio contact with federal handlers who monitored cartel activity throughout the Southwest region. The customers who loved his food had no idea they were being protected by someone who had survived 3 years in one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. Michael knew how cartels operated, how they thought, how they planned their attacks, how they hunted their enemies, and most importantly, how to stay alive when everyone wanted you dead and had unlimited resources to make it happen. His apartment above his cousin's garage was actually a safe house maintained by the U.S. Marshal Service. The cousin was a federal agent working deep cover. The neighbors were carefully vetted and screened for security risks, and the entire block was under discreet surveillance 24 hours a day by rotating teams of federal agents. But to everyone in the neighborhood, Miguel was just a quiet, hard-working guy who sent money to family in Mexico and never caused any trouble. Michael had tried to build something resembling a normal life within the strict constraints of witness protection. He dated occasionally, always women who knew absolutely nothing about his real past or the danger that followed him everywhere he attended the local Catholic church regularly, because it provided both community connection and excellent cover for his assumed identity. He even learned to genuinely enjoy the art of cooking because it gave him something peaceful and creative to focus on during the long hours when paranoia threatened to consume him. But late at night, when the neighborhood was quiet and the city slept, he would practice the deadly skills that had kept him alive during his undercover years. Tactical shooting drills, close quarters, combat techniques, surveillance detection methods, and multiple escape route planning. Because Michael knew with absolute certainty that witness protection was never truly permanent, and the cartels never forgot a debt that needed to be paid in blood. The Sinaloa organization had put a $10 million bounty on his head, dead or alive, and they had the unlimited resources, patience, and motivation to keep looking until they found him. Some of his former DEA colleagues thought he was being paranoid, that after 8 years in hiding, he should relax and trust the federal protection system to keep him safe. Michael knew better because he understood exactly how cartels operated, and he knew they were still actively hunting. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when Michael noticed a man taking pictures of his food truck from across the street. The man was trying to be discreet, but Michael had been trained to spot surveillance during his years working undercover. The camera angles, the timing, the way the man positioned himself all suggested professional reconnaissance, not casual photography. Michael continued serving customers while mentally cataloging every important detail: the man's physical appearance, clothing choices, vehicle type and license plate, and behavioral patterns. This could be nothing more than a food blogger documenting local restaurants or a city health inspector conducting routine surveillance. But Michael's finely tuned survival instincts were screaming that something was definitely wrong. That afternoon, 2 more suspicious individuals appeared at different times during the lunch rush, both ordering food but paying far more attention to Michael than to their tacos, both asking casual questions about his schedule, his family background, his daily routines, the kind of questions that seemed innocent to regular customers, but felt like intelligence gathering to someone who had spent years in the field. Michael activated protocols he had hoped never to use, sending coded messages to his federal handlers while maintaining his normal cheerful demeanor with customers. That evening, he conducted counter-surveillance to determine if he was being followed and discovered a pattern of vehicles that appeared to be conducting organized surveillance. The federal response was immediate but cautious. Marshals began monitoring the situation while preparing contingency plans for emergency relocation. But Michael had been in this situation before, and he knew that running only delayed the inevitable. If the cartel had found him, they wouldn't give up. 3 days later, the surveillance became more obvious and increasingly aggressive, suggesting that whoever was watching him felt confident enough to stop hiding their presence. Michael recognized the escalation pattern from his DEA training and his years undercover. They were moving systematically from reconnaissance to target confirmation to final action planning. That night, Michael received a call on his secure phone. "Agent Rodriguez. This is Marshal Stevens. We have confirmed cartel activity in your area. We need to initiate immediate relocation protocols." Michael looked around the small apartment that had been his home for 5 years at the life he had built as Miguel Ramirez, at the community that had accepted him and the customers who trusted him. "Marshal, I need 12 hours to prepare." "Negative, too dangerous. We extract you now." Michael understood their concern, But he also understood something they didn't. The cartel wasn't just coming for him. They were coming for anyone who might have helped him, and that included innocent people who thought they were just buying lunch from a friendly taco vendor. "Give me 12 hours, he repeated. "I need to make sure no one else gets hurt." Michael spent his last night as Miguel Ramirez preparing for a confrontation he had hoped would never come, but had always known was inevitable. He methodically cleaned his weapons, checked his ammunition supplies, reviewed all possible escape routes, and said goodbye to a life and identity that had never really belonged to him, but had become more real than anything else he had ever known. The next morning, he opened the food truck as usual, but everything was different. The cheerful vendor act was gone, replaced by the tactical awareness that had kept him alive in Culiacan. His regular customers noticed the change but assumed he was having a bad day. They had no idea they were about to witness the end of Miguel Ramirez and the return of Agent Michael Rodriguez. The attack came during lunch rush, when the truck was surrounded by office workers and construction crews. Exactly as Michael had expected, cartels preferred chaos and civilian cover to mask their operations. What they hadn't expected was that their target had been preparing for this moment for 8 years. 3 black SUVs moved into position blocking escape routes, while sicarios dressed as construction workers began moving through the crowd with weapons concealed under tool belts and hard hats. It was a professional operation designed to look like random street violence until it was too late for anyone to react, but Michael had spotted them before they completed their setup. "Drop," he shouted to the customers around his truck. "Active shooter, take cover now." His command voice cut through the lunch conversation like a knife, sending office workers diving behind parked cars and construction crews, scrambling for cover, while Michael reached under his counter for weapons that Miguel Ramirez was never supposed to have. The first gunman emerged from the crowd, expecting to find a terrified food vendor. Instead, he found Agent Michael Rodriguez, who put 2 precision shots center mass before the sicario could raise his weapon. The second and third attackers tried to use civilians as shields, but Michael had trained for urban combat scenarios with non-combatant presence. Each shot was calculated, each movement was tactical. The man who had infiltrated the Sinaloa Cartel was still the same operator who had survived 3 years surrounded by killers. The only difference was that now he was fighting in his own neighborhood, protecting people who had become his friends. The gunfight lasted less than 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. Bullets shattered the food truck's windows, destroyed equipment, and sent panicked civilians running for safety, while Michael used every piece of cover available to outmaneuver attackers who had expected easy prey. When the shooting stopped, 6 cartel operatives were down. Michael was wounded but alive, and the neighborhood that had known him as a quiet taco vendor was learning that their Miguel had been protecting them in ways they never imagined. The FBI investigation that followed revealed everything about Miguel Ramirez. Real identity: Agent Michael Rodriguez, decorated DEA operative who had risked his life to destroy one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in North America. His 3-year undercover assignment had been classified at the highest levels. But now the truth was public record. Detective Sarah Martinez, who led the local investigation, found herself interviewing a man who had just fought off a cartel hit squad while serving lunch to downtown office workers. Why the food truck, Detective Martinez asked while studying DEA records that documented someone who had been among the most valuable undercover operatives in federal service. "Because I wanted a life that meant something." Michael replied with quiet honesty. "I spent 3 years pretending to be a criminal, watching drugs destroy communities, seeing violence that never made the news. I wanted to do something that helped people in a simple, honest way, but you knew they would find you eventually. I hoped they wouldn't. But I prepared like they would," Michael said. "That's why I chose this location, this business, this identity. Everything was designed to give me tactical advantages while letting me build something positive." The media wanted exclusive interviews. Michael declined. The DEA wanted to bring him back as an instructor. Michael asked for time to think. The U.S. Marshals wanted to relocate him immediately. Michael requested permission to stay and rebuild. The customers who had eaten at Miguel's Tacos for 5 years were learning that their friendly vendor had been a federal agent living under an assumed identity, that the man who remembered their names and asked about their families had been protecting them from dangers they never knew existed. Maria Santos, who worked at the courthouse and ate lunch at the truck every Tuesday, said it perfectly. He was always Miguel to us. It doesn't matter what his real name is. He took care of this neighborhood, and we want to take care of him. The cartel operatives who survived the downtown Phoenix shootout provided information that led to additional arrests and further dismantling of Sinaloa operations, but more importantly, their failure sent a message throughout the criminal underworld that Agent Miguel Rodriguez was not an easy target. Michael received new identity documents that would allow him to live openly for the first time in 8 years, but he chose to keep operating the food truck under his real name in the same location with the same customers who had supported him through his most dangerous years. The truck was rebuilt with better security. The apartment was upgraded with federal protection protocols, but the most important changes were in the community itself. Neighbors who had simply tolerated Miguel began actively protecting Michael. Office workers who had been customers became friends. Construction crews who had eaten his tacos became informal security. Detective Martinez continued to check on him regularly, not because she suspected trouble, but because she had seen how much the neighborhood meant to him and how much he meant to them. You could go anywhere now, she told him during one visit. Why stay here where they found you? Once Michael looked around at the corner that had been his home, his business, and his cover for 5 years, at the customers lining up for lunch, at the community that had accepted Miguel and embraced Michael. Because this is where I belong, he said, where Miguel became real and where Michael learned to live again. Today, if you visit downtown Phoenix, you might see a bright yellow food truck on the corner of Roosevelt and Central, serving the best tacos in the city. The owner will greet you with a genuine smile. Remember your order and ask about your family with authentic interest. What makes his story different is that Miguel Rodriguez no longer has to pretend to be someone else. He can be both the DEA agent who risked everything to fight drug trafficking and the community businessman who serves lunch to people who have become family. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who choose to build instead of destroy. Sometimes your protector wears an apron instead of a badge. Sometimes a warrior hangs up his weapon but never stops serving his community. Miguel Rodriguez found peace, not by forgetting who he used to be, but by becoming someone better. Someone who could use his experience to protect innocent people while building something positive that would last long after the cartel stopped hunting. Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary until you learned about their extraordinary past? Share their story in the comments, because heroes are everywhere, usually cooking your lunch instead of making headlines. Subscribe to The Human Stories for more tales of hidden warriors, quiet protectors, and the everyday heroes who keep us safe while building communities one customer at a time. Because sometimes the most important battles are won, not with bullets, but with tacos. And sometimes the best way to defeat your enemies is to live well despite them.